Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Have you ever really thought about how you'd want your funeral handled?
Oh, that is a heavy question to start with.
Right. But seriously, imagine standing in the shadow of a colossal stone monument, and it's built entirely to house a dead body.
Yeah.
You are living in this ancient culture that is completely, unconditionally obsessed with the afterlife.
Hmm.
For them, death is not some quiet fading away.
No, it's a massive industry.
Yeah, an industry. It's this huge economic and religious machine designed to preserve the physical body forever in what they call an eternal house.
Right, the Egyptian pyramids and tombs.
Spot on. Now, imagine you are a foreigner living in this empire. You have gained massive wealth, your family is totally secure, and you have favor with the highest rulers in the land.
You're basically at the top of the food chain.
Yeah. And when you die, they offer you the ultimate honor, a permanent, glorious spot in their stone monuments. But instead of saying thank you, you look at your children and give them a strict, unyielding order.
A very specific order.
Right. You tell them to carry your corpse out of this magnificent empire, walk across a dangerous desert, and bury you in a dusty, empty cave in a land you do not even govern.
It is a deliberate rejection. I mean, it is a total refusal to assimilate into the surrounding pagan culture.
And that is the scenario we are looking at today. Today's material centers on a really short 3-verse passage, Genesis chapter 50, verses 12 through 14.
It's so short you could easily miss it.
You really could. If you were just skimming through the end of the book, it reads like a simple funeral log, just a record of the burial of the biblical patriarch Jacob.
But there's so much more happening under the surface.
Yeah, because the analysis we are reviewing today argues this specific burial procession is a massive theological rebellion. It is a bold historical claim about absolute, literal promises from God. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Our mission for this deep dive is to look past a standard funeral account to uncover a severe critique of taking comfort in a pagan culture. We are going to examine the strict grammatical mechanics, the ancient real estate laws, and, the historical context that makes this 3-verse passage so explosive.
The contrast we are going to look at is just staggering. We are talking about a family standing right at the intersection of the greatest empire of the ancient world and a desolate plot of dirt.
A plot of dirt that changes everything.
Yeah, the choice they make in these 3 verses dictates the entire trajectory of the biblical narrative that follows. I mean, it sets the stage for the Exodus, the conquest of Canaan, and the eventual establishment of the nation of Israel.
So to really grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at the historical setting first. You have to figure out why Jacob's funeral location was such a massive geopolitical and spiritual deal at the time.
Right, context is everything here.
It really is. Let us set the stage for you. Jacob's family had lived in an Egyptian region called Goshen for 17 years. This happens during what historians call Egypt's Middle Kingdom.
And the Middle Kingdom was a period of immense political centralization. It brought huge economic stability for the Egyptian empire.
They were basically the superpower of the day, right?
Oh, the undisputed superpower of the Mediterranean world at this time. They have military dominance, they have agricultural surplus from the Nile inundation, and a highly organized bureaucracy.
And Jacob's family is not, living on the margins of this society. They have experienced 17 prosperous years in Goshen.
And Goshen is prime real estate.
Prime. They have massive herds, physical security, and imperial favor. Joseph, who is Jacob's son, holds high office.
He is second only to Pharaoh.
Right. He is essentially the prime minister managing the empire's food supply during a global crisis. So the family is highly insulated from the famines and the chaos happening everywhere else. They are totally safe.
What's fascinating here is the cultural environment they were swimming in. Egypt was a society absolutely dominated by mortuary science.
Which is so alien to how we think today.
Completely. We are talking about mummification, the construction of monumental tombs, and an entire priesthood dedicated to the cult of the dead.
Wow.
Yeah, the religion and economy of Egypt were heavily geared toward preserving the physical body so the soul could navigate the afterlife. They believed that your eternal state depended on your physical preservation and the grandeur of your eternal house.
And the text leading up to our passage shows that Jacob actually received this royal treatment.
He did.
He did not get a quick, quiet burial. Jacob was embalmed by Joseph's physicians for 40 days.
And 40 days is not a simple wrapping process.
No.
No, that is the full state-level embalming procedure reserved for royalty and high-ranking officials. It involves the removal of organs, the desiccation of the body using matron salt, and complex ritual wrappings.
That is intense. And that 40-day process was followed by a 70-day national mourning period.
70 days.
The whole nation of Egypt is weeping for this Hebrew patriarch. That shows the immense political respect the family had. I mean, Jacob is given honors that rival the royal family itself.
Absolutely.
But here is the thing I keep getting hung up on. Think about a modern parallel. Imagine a high-level corporate executive moving to a foreign country.
Okay.
They save that nation's economy. On their deathbed, the foreign government offers them a state funeral in the capital city. Monuments, dignitaries, street closures, the whole 9 yards.
A massive honor.
Right. But this executive looks at their kids and insists that they haul their body across a dangerous border to an empty, dusty plot of ground back in their homeland. Why turn down the eternal house in Egypt? Is it just, I don't know, homesickness? Did he just miss the hills of Canaan?
It is actually the complete opposite of a sentimental family decision.
Really?
Yeah. It is a hostile legal claim and a theological boundary line. To accept an Egyptian burial would mean permanent integration into pagan culture.
Oh, I see.
It would signal to everyone watching that the family of Jacob had finally arrived, that they were now, for all intents and purposes, Egyptian.
It would be assimilated.
Exactly. I mean, spot on. The material we are reviewing explains the concept of covenant exile. Jacob's dying command acts as a strict barrier.
A barrier against what?
Against getting too comfortable. It is a physical, historical rejection of making a permanent home in a culture that was only ever meant to be a temporary shelter.
A temporary shelter. Wow, that distinction changes everything. Goshen was a place of rescue during a brutal famine, but it was never the promised inheritance.
Right. God never told Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob that their final destination was the Nile Delta.
So if Jacob allows his bones to be entombed in a grand Egyptian mausoleum, what is he saying to his kids?
He is effectively telling his descendants, this is our home now. Assimilate, blend in, become part of this empire.
Which would destroy their unique identity as God's people.
Yeah. But by demanding to be carried out of the empire, he is making a physical, undeniable statement that Egypt is a house of exile. The true hope, the true promise, lies elsewhere.
He is forcing his family to look away from the wealth of Egypt and back toward the promises spoken by God.
He is pulling their focus back to the covenant.
Okay, so having established why Jacob vehemently rejected the Egyptian honors, we have to look at the specific dirt he chose instead.
The geography really matters here.
It really does, because he did not just say, take me anywhere but here. He was incredibly specific about the plot of land he wanted to be buried in, and the historical analysis we have spends a lot of time breaking down why that specific location is so crucial.
He demanded burial in the cave of the field at Machpelah before Mamre.
And that is in the land of Canaan. Now, I know there's a massive legal history tied to this specific case. It goes all the way back to his grandfather Abraham.
Yes, it does. If we look back at Genesis chapter 23, we find the record of Abraham buying this specific cave from a man named Ephron the Hittite. The price was 400 silver shekels, and this was an exorbitant amount of money at the time.
A fortune.
Truly. The narrative stresses that this was not a casual handshake deal between neighbors. This was a strict legal transaction witnessed by the sons of Heth at the city gate.
I want to push back on that a bit, though. Why does the exorbitant price matter so much?
Well, it shows intent.
But if Abraham was wealthy, couldn't it just be that he overpaid because he was grieving his wife Sarah, who was the first to be buried there? Why is the financial transaction so critical to the theological point?
Because paying full market price, and an inflated one at that, establishes an unalterable possession.
Oh, so nobody could contest it later.
Right. You see, the patriarchs lived as nomads. They owned vast herds of livestock and lived in tents, but they did not own the land they walked on.
They're just passing through.
Yeah. The Cave of Machpelah was the first and only piece of real estate the patriarchs actually owned in Canaan during their lifetimes. By purchasing it legally, publicly, and for a massive sum, Abraham was asserting an absolute claim against any future Canaanite arguments of adverse possession.
He was planting a legal flag in the soil.
Yes, no Canaanite could ever claim the land was abandoned or stolen.
So when Jacob says, bury me there, he is claiming the legal title deed of the promised land.
Yeah.
He is reminding his family that they actually own a piece of Canaan.
And the Hebrew grammar used to describe this transaction is highly technical.
Let's dig into the grammar then.
The analysis provides a strict exegesis of the terminology used by Moses, the author of Genesis. Take the word Machpelah.
Okay, Machpelah.
It is a very rare noun in the Hebrew canon, occurring only 6 times, and entirely within the book of Genesis. It derives from a root meaning double or folded.
So it is a specific geographic descriptor, not just some poetic name.
No, it is a technical legal descriptor of the property lines. Furthermore, Moses deliberately avoids using generic words for the grave.
Like what?
Well, he does not use quaver, which just means a hole in the ground, and he does not use Sheol, which refers to the realm of the dead.
Okay, so he's very intentional with his vocabulary.
Very. Instead, he uses precise legal phrasing. The text calls it lazasakweber, which translates to a permanent holding or an unalterable estate.
A permanent holding. Wow, that phrasing completely changes how you read the passage.
It anchors the whole thing in reality.
It really is a legal anchor. And I think this challenges a lot of modern tendencies. The argument presented here points out how easy it is for you and me, as modern readers, to allegorize or spiritualize biblical promises.
We do that all the time.
We do. We read about the promised land, and we immediately think of going to heaven or finding a peaceful state of mind.
A spiritual metaphor.
Yeah. But this specific text argues violently against that impulse. It asserts that God's promises involve literal geography for a literal people. God promised a physical, visible kingdom, and this public real estate purchase proves it.
The physical reality is undeniably central in the text. Abraham weighed out literal silver at a physical city gate. Jacob's physical body is being carried across literal borders.
There's nothing abstract about it.
Nothing. The theological claim here is that you cannot just dissolve the physical promises of the Old Testament into vague spiritual metaphors.
The dust matters.
The dust of the patriarchs resting in that specific legally purchased soil is a physical pledge. It anticipates a literal consummation of God's covenant on the earth.
So the location is a legal anchor, a permanent holding. With that established, we need to shift to examining how Jacob's sons responded to this heavy directive.
Right, because hearing a command and doing it are 2 different things.
Especially when it involves moving a corpse across international borders in the ancient world. I mean, a dying wish is one thing, but actual execution is another.
This brings us to the first verse of our focus passage, Genesis 50.12. The text states very plainly that his sons did for him precisely as he charged them.
Precisely as he charged them. Let's look at the grammar there, because the Hebrew structure reveals a lot about the nature of their obedience.
The grammatical parallelism here is striking. The author uses the peel stem of the Hebrew verb owa.
Wait, can you explain the peel stem simply for us?
Sure. In Hebrew, the peel stem often denotes an intensive, deliberate action. It is not a casual suggestion. It is an authoritative, binding legal order. Jacob laid a heavy, uncompromising command upon his sons. He bound their consciences to this specific task.
And how do the sons respond to this intensive command?
This intensive command is met immediately in the text by the active verb waya asu, which is a qual imperfect verb meaning to do or to execute.
And the qual stem?
The qual stem is the simple active voice. The grammatical structure leaves zero space or hesitation between the patriarchal command and the filial execution.
So they didn't sit around debating it?
No. There is no negotiation. There is no committee meeting to discuss if carrying a body across the desert is the most efficient use of their time. They simply obey the command given to them.
Which is incredible when you think about who these guys actually are.
Their history is pretty dark.
It is. I mean, think about the irony of this situation. These are the same brothers who, decades earlier, fractured the family through deceit and violence.
They hated Joseph.
Hated him. They threw him in a pit. They sold him into slavery to Midianite traders.
And then they lied about it.
Yeah, they took his beautiful coat, dipped it in goat's blood, and handed it to Jacob, faking Joseph's death. They watched their father grieve over a false death for years and did absolutely nothing.
It was cruel.
But now, at the end of the book, they are in total unity. They are carrying a real body, their father's body, in absolute truth and strict obedience. I have to wonder, is this just guilt?
What do you mean?
Are they just trying to make up for the pain they caused him earlier in life, like a guilt-driven funeral procession?
This raises an important question about the nature of grace and covenant order. The framework we are studying views this unhesitating obedience not as mere guilt, but as evidence of restored covenant order within the family.
Restored order.
Yeah. God has worked through decades of famine, individual guilt, and divine providence to bring these fractured, violent men into a unified submission to the patriarchal promise.
So they've actually changed.
They have. They are no longer operating out of selfish jealousy. They are operating under the authority of the word spoken to them.
And the analysis we're reviewing uses this prompt obedience to issue a sharp critique of modern church models, right?
It does take a very sharp angle there.
What is the connection between a Bronze Age funeral procession and a modern church setting?
The argument takes a very strict stance against pragmatic and seeker-sensitive church models.
How so?
Well, the assertion is that modern religious movements often evaluate divine commands based on human convenience or efficiency.
Oh, sure.
Think about the logistics in Jacob's day. Burying him in an Egyptian pyramid would have been highly pragmatic.
It would have been so much easier.
It would have saved immense expense. It would have avoided the logistical nightmare of a massive border-crossing funeral procession, and it would have secured permanent favor with the pharaoh.
Honestly, it makes total logical sense to just bury him in Goshen. If I were on the elder board of that family, I would vote for the Egyptian burial.
From a worldly perspective, sure.
It is safer, cheaper, and politically advantageous.
According to the wisdom of the world, yes. But the text argues that true faith relies on objective, spoken commands, rejecting human modifications.
So no tweaking the rules to fit the times.
Right. The sons did not adjust the command to fit their current cultural context. They executed the word exactly, precisely as it was given.
Wow.
Furthermore, the author of the material we are studying applies this concept specifically to family and church structure. The argument asserts that this text enforces complementarianism and male headship.
Okay, for the listener who might not be familiar with that term, let's explain how complementarianism connects to this passage, just to report what the source is claiming here impartially.
Sure. So complementarianism is the theological view that men and women have different but complementary roles and responsibilities in marriage, family life, and religious leadership. The material points out how the sons gathered together to carry out the patriarchal directives without question.
They acted as a unit.
Yes. The author argues that this models a covenantal order, specifically male headship within the family structure, that refuses to bow to modern egalitarian cultural shifts.
I see.
The sons submit to the father's headship, and they execute the command as a unified male leadership over the family's future.
So the author is drawing a straight line from the sons' unified, uncompromising obedience to their father to a call for modern readers to reject cultural accommodation.
That's the argument, yeah.
Whether that accommodation is found in church growth strategies that prioritize convenience, or in family structures that mirror modern culture rather than biblical mandates.
Right. The command is the command, regardless of the cultural friction it causes.
That is the core argument presented. Meticulous obedience to a covenant precept always exposes and rebukes worldly assimilation.
Because when you obey God's word strictly, you naturally stick out from the culture around you.
You look different. You act different.
You bury your dead differently.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, totally. Okay, so we have seen the obedience of the sons in historical time. But let's look at the bigger picture of who is actually reading this text first.
The original audience.
Right. We need to look at how Moses used this historical event to speak to his original readers. Who was the original audience for the book of Genesis?
The original audience was the Israelite congregation wandering in the Sinai Peninsula centuries after this funeral took place.
So Moses is writing this later.
Yes. Moses wrote this narrative while they were in the wilderness, after the exodus from Egypt.
Let's paint a picture of that original audience for a second. Picture yourself as an Israelite in the Sinai desert.
Not a comfortable place.
No. You are living in a tent. It is blindingly hot. It is dusty. The environment is actively trying to kill you.
And the diet is pretty repetitive.
Yeah. You are eating manna, the literal same bread-like substance, every single day. And the text in the book of Numbers tells us that this wilderness generation was incredibly prone to grumbling.
They complained constantly.
They kept looking back at Egypt through this bizarre lens of carnal nostalgia. They craved the fish, the cucumbers, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic of the Nile Delta.
And in doing so, they conveniently ignored the whips of their taskmasters.
They forgot the bad parts.
Totally. They ignored the brick-making quotas and the reality of their brutal slavery. They suffered from a massive national case of Stockholm Syndrome.
Stockholm Syndrome, yeah. They romanticized their bondage because their present freedom was physically uncomfortable.
It's crazy, but it's true.
So imagine you are one of those grumbling Israelites. You miss the food of Egypt. You were tired of the desert. And Moses gathers the camp and reads this account of Jacob's death.
It would hit hard.
It functions as a massive psychological and theological rebuke. Moses is essentially saying, listen to me. Your great ancestor, Jacob, lived in the absolute best part of Egypt.
He had it all.
Right. He had the highest honors, he had the wealth, but when he died, he demanded to be taken out of that empire and brought to the dusty hills of Canaan.
So the contrast is intentional.
Very. If your patriarch refused to stay in Egypt when he had everything, how dare you, the living nation, desire to crawl back into Egypt when all it ever offered you was chains?
It is a brilliant pastoral move by Moses. He places a historical mirror in front of the congregation to shame their unbelief.
To wake them up?
Yeah. The authorial design here is to completely sever any false notions of returning to the pagan world. Moses is telling them that their survival depends on absolute separation from Egypt.
But it goes beyond just a rebuke of their complaining, right? The analysis frames this passage as a literal call to mobilize.
It really does.
Mobilize for what? At this point in the narrative, they're just wandering around the desert waiting for the older generation to die off.
They are wandering, but their ultimate destination is the conquest of Canaan under the leadership of Joshua.
Okay, the conquest.
Remember, the previous generation had refused to enter the land because they were terrified of the giants and the fortified cities.
They felt like grasshoppers.
Right. They saw themselves as grassroots invaders taking on massive, established nations. But by recounting the meticulous details of Jacob's burial in Machpelah, Moses is steeling the nerves of the congregation for war.
He is changing their paradigm from invaders to inheritors.
Precisely. He is reminding them of the legal title deed we discussed earlier.
The silver shekels.
Yes. When they finally cross the Jordan River, they are not a rogue militia invading a foreign territory with uncertainty. They are going to claim an ancestral home.
A home they already own.
A home that was already legally purchased by Abraham and physically occupied by the bones of their fathers. The covenantal right to the land was already established in history.
That completely changes the psychology of the conquest.
It gives them a totally different mindset.
You are not stealing land. You are evicting squatters from an estate you already own. The bones of Jacob act as a down payment, a physical proof that the land is theirs by divine right.
It gives them the moral and theological courage to fight.
And that leads us to the immediate aftermath of the burial in Genesis, because verse 14 holds a surprising twist in the narrative that speaks directly to the timing of God.
It really is a surprising verse.
Right. Let's look at the return to Egypt, because this is where the emotional whiplash really hits.
Oh, definitely.
After carrying the body all the way to Canaan, after arriving at the Promised Land and burying Jacob in the legal estate of Machpelah, Joseph and his brothers do not stay in Canaan.
No, they don't.
Verse 14 says they returned to Egypt.
The specific Hebrew verb used is wayashub, meaning he returned or went back.
Put yourself in that position. You just walked out of exile. You just touched the Promised Land.
You're finally there.
You are standing on the soil God promised to your family forever. But you cannot stay. You have to turn around, walk back across the desert, and re-enter the empire of Egypt.
It must have been heart-wrenching.
You secure the physical burial site, but you must return to face centuries of incoming slavery and affliction before the actual exodus happens. Why?
It's a huge question.
Why not just stay right then and there? They're already in Canaan. They have a massive caravan. Why not just set up camp and claim the promise early?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we hit upon the doctrine of providence.
Okay, providence.
The analysis highlights a historic view of providence, which teaches that God upholds, directs, and governs all creatures and actions by his wise and holy providence.
So he's orchestrating all of it.
Yes. The return to Egypt is a profound, an incredible demonstration that God's timing is perfect. And human faith must submit to that timing, even when it involves suffering.
So faith is not just believing a promise exists. It is waiting for the promise to be fulfilled on God's schedule, not ours.
That's right. The return to Egypt proves that mature faith does not grasp unlawfully or prematurely.
They didn't try to force God's hand.
Exactly. Right. The sons of Jacob had the promise, but they did not have the divine authorization to execute the conquest yet.
Because the timing wasn't right.
God had previously told Abraham that his descendants would be sojourners and afflicted for 400 years, because the iniquity of the Amorites was not yet complete.
Wow, so there were other nations involved in this timeline.
Yeah. The nation of Israel had to multiply in the crucible of Egypt first.
It is the ultimate exercise in delayed gratification. They possess the deed, but they do not possess the keys to the house yet.
It is, and the material uses the specific movement, the willing return to a land of eventual bondage, to make a sharp theological refutation.
Okay, refuting what?
The argument is that this sequence of events refutes Arminian theology.
Let's define Arminianism for the listener, just to provide context on what the argument is actually refuting here.
Sure. In broad strokes, Arminian theology places a heavy emphasis on human free will. It generally posits that humans have the autonomous ability to choose or reject God's grace,
Okay.
and that God's providence operates cooperatively with human choices or is based on God's foreknowledge of what humans will freely choose to do.
Got it. So how does this passage argue against that?
Well, the perspective we are reviewing argues that Genesis 50.14 shows something different. It asserts that human wills and actions, like Joseph choosing to pack up his family and willingly walk back to Egypt, are entirely guided by God to execute his unalterable sovereign decrees.
So Joseph isn't just making a random free choice that God then reacts to.
Correct. Joseph is making a real conscious choice to return. He physically packs his bags.
Right.
But that choice is perfectly aligned with and governed by the divine timeline that requires Israel to suffer in Egypt before the Exodus.
So their choices fit perfectly into the predetermined plan.
Yes. They are acting freely according to their own desires, yet their actions flawlessly fulfill a script written centuries earlier.
That is wild.
The argument here is that providence does not violate human will, but it absolutely governs it to achieve God's predetermined ends.
That is a heavy theological weight to place on one verb, but it fits the narrative arc perfectly. They go back because the sovereign decree says they must wait.
They wait under providence.
So we have covered the historical tension with Egypt, the legal dirt of Machpelah, the strict obedience of the sons, the psychological rebuke to the original wilderness audience, and the painful waiting under divine providence.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. Now let's elevate the discussion. Let's look at the overarching redemptive themes, because the material we're reviewing draws some very specific typological connections and theological corrections from this burial.
The analysis moves from historical exegesis to robust theological polemics in this final section.
Let's dig into those polemics.
First, the test is used to explicitly refute Roman Catholic purgatorial rites.
Walk me through that logic. I mean, how does a Bronze Age burial in Genesis refute a doctrine that develops much later in church history?
We have to look at the historical development of purgatory first.
Okay.
The doctrine of purgatory involves the idea of an intermediate state where souls are purified through suffering before entering heaven.
Right, getting cleaned up before the final destination.
Exactly. A major component of this theology is the practice of the living offering prayers, alms, and masses for the dead to shorten their time in purgatory.
So the living can help the dead.
Yes. But the argument presented in our material points out the stark contrast in the nature of Jacob's dying request.
Oh, I see where this is going. Jacob never asks for prayers.
No, he doesn't. He does not ask for masses to be said for his soul. He does not ask his sons to intercede on his behalf in some intermediate disembodied state.
His focus was entirely different.
His entire focus was on the physical location of his dead body. He demanded a physical burial in a specific promised geography.
Which points to a physical hope.
Spot on. The author argues that this proves the patriarchs held a historical hope in a future bodily resurrection. Their faith was anchored in what God would do to their physical dust on the last day, not on mystical rites performed by the living for a disembodied soul.
That brings it back to the physical reality of the promises we talked about earlier. God redeems the physical body and the physical earth.
It's a holistic redemption.
Yeah. It is not just about escaping the physical world to float in a spiritual realm. God cares about the dirt, and he cares about the bones.
He really does.
And the analysis takes this even further by looking at the cave of Machpelah as a type, right? A shadow pointing to a greater future reality.
Yes. In biblical theology, a type is an Old Testament historical person, place, or event that prefigures a New Testament reality.
Like a preview.
A preview, yeah. The argument is that Machpelah is a type of the secure redemption found in Christ. Think about how the cave was originally acquired.
Abraham bought it with the 400 silver shekels.
Right. He bought it with a specific weighed amount of silver. It was a costly legal purchase that secured the dirt. The material connects this to 1 Peter chapter 1.
What does 1 Peter say?
It notes that Christ purchased his people not with corruptible things like silver and gold, but with his own precious blood.
Wow. The silver secured a grave in Canaan, but the blood of Christ secures an eternal inheritance.
The mechanism of purchase is escalated from silver to blood.
That is beautiful.
But there is a crucial contrast here, and this is where the Christological focus really sharpens.
Okay, what's the contrast?
The cave of Machpelah is a monument where a dead patriarch waits for a promise. The bones are still there in Hebron today.
They're still waiting.
Yes. But when we look to the New Testament, we do not look to a cave full of bones. We look to the empty tomb of Jesus Christ.
That is the difference. Machpelah proves that the patriarchs died in faith, hoping for the promise to be fulfilled. But the empty tomb proves that the promise has actually been secured.
Christ conquered the grave. He walked out of it.
And because Christ conquered the grave, what is the conclusion?
The theological conclusion is that the literal dust of the saints is precious to God. It is secure under his redemptive purchase, and it will physically rise on the last day.
The body isn't just discarded.
No, the burial of a believer is not a symbol of defeat or a permanent end. It is a planted seed awaiting the physical resurrection.
So what does this all mean for us?
That's the big question.
We have dug through ancient Egyptian mortuary practices, Hittite real estate law, Hebrew verb stems, and heavy theological debates about providence and resurrection.
We really unpacked a lot from 3 verses.
We did. Let's synthesize the core takeaways from the material today. The burial of Jacob is not a soft, sentimental story about a family honoring a dying wish.
Far from it.
It is a battle cry of faith. It is a text that demands precise, uncompromising obedience to the spoken word of God, even when the surrounding culture offers a much easier, pragmatic, and cheaper alternative.
It demands an absolute trust in literal promises.
Yeah, that God operates in history, in geography, and in physical reality, not just in abstract spiritual ideas. And perhaps most difficult of all, it demands patient waiting under divine providence.
Because God's timing is rarely our timing.
Right. It teaches us that you can hold the promise in your heart while still walking back into the exile of Egypt, trusting that God's timing is flawless, even when it means suffering.
It is a text that forces every reader to evaluate their own allegiance.
Are you building an eternal house in Egypt? Or are you living as a pilgrim waiting for the promised inheritance?
That's the crux of it.
And that is the challenge we want to leave you with today. Look at your own life. Look at your daily routines, your financial investments, your hopes, and your anxieties.
Everything you do.
Yeah. Are you building a permanent mansion in a place that is only supposed to be a temporary exile? Where is your Machpelah?
That's a great question to end on.
Where is the physical evidence in your life proving you are living for a future kingdom rather than the comfort of today? If someone looked at your life, would they see a person assimilating into the empire or a person planting a flag in the promises of God? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. Until next time, keep your eyes on the promises and remember that the dust of the saints is secure.